Hello, Jose and Sebastian. How are you guys doing today?
Hi, Rick.
Hi,
Uh,
Rick.
we are very happy to be here. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun talking to you guys. I always love talking to folks that are still active, guiding and outfitting and all that stuff. You guys are trying to make a living doing this stuff. It's great. I love it.
Yeah, well, that's been all my life.
That's right. That's right. That's right. And Sebastian, same for you. Has it been your entire life pretty much?
Well, I actually do some stuff since I'm a little kid because of my dad, but
Uh,
I do not work as a guide. I'm a filmmaker, so we kind of combine our professions and our work to make this project.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, we'll link to all your work in the show notes. Jose, do you
Thank-
remember your first time in the mountains?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Well, when I was a kid, I lived in the outskirts of La Paz, the capital of Bolivia, and it was a very, very small city. I mean, I don't think it was more than 300,000 people living on it. And with my brother, we liked to go to the hills. Well, La Paz is in the middle of the mountains, right? So
Right.
we always, all weekends and on our holidays, we were always hiking around the hills of La Paz. And although the city is surrounded by mountains, people living in La Paz don't really realize how close the mountains are. I mean, there is not a mountain culture in La Paz.
Oh, right. It's a
Uh,
big city, right?
it's a big city now. It's over 2 million people, but
Wow.
um, you can see the mountains, the glaciers, and the peaks. I believe most people think that they are just ornaments in the landscape, right? They
Hmm.
don't really see the mountains as uh, places to go or to visit.
Right.
So one day, my father took my brother and us and me to the jungle side. He wanted to do some businesses there. And it was the first time for us to cross the Andes
Oh,
because
wow.
in order to go to the Amazon jungle, we have to go to a pass and then get into the Amazonian jungle. And it was the first time I saw the mountains so close. And at that moment, I fell in love with the mountains. And I said, I want to be in those places. So after coming back from that trip, we started going to the mountains with my brother. We didn't tell anything to our parents. We were going to the mountains alone. We had no equipment, no knowledge, and we did some things. We traversed the glaciers, and we had no accidents, fortunately. And so we started going mountaineering just as kids. I mean, I was 14, 15, my brother 2 years younger, until we found someone to teach us how
Mm.
to go to the mountains. And that's how I started. And then I wanted to be in the mountains. I went to university to study a profession that would keep me in the outdoors. So I was studying geography, but it was a messy time in Bolivia, too
Mm.
many problems, economic, social unrest, and university was not working properly. So at that time, hopefully or fortunately, there was a project financed by the German government to train mountain guides and mountain instructors.
Oh,
So
wow.
I chose that way, and that's how I became a mountain guide.
That's very cool. So the German government was teaching guiding over. That's interesting.
Yeah,
Huh. Yeah. And do you remember what your first climb was? Your first mountain that you climbed?
the my first real mountain. I mean, with glaciers and the walls and faces and so on. It's a small mountain very close to La Paz called Huila Manquilizani. It's about 5,300, 400 meters.
Uh-huh.
And we did it without any knowledge of mountaineering and or equipment.
Oh, wow.
We climbed it. Uh, now that I think about it, we took many risks, really,
Yeah.
but we were lucky. We were really very lucky.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny how a lot of folks that have been mountaineering for a long time, they tell a similar story, right? They just went up and started walking up the mountain. The next thing they knew, they were on top, but they didn't have any equipment that they should have had, but they survived.
Yeah.
Pretty funny. Yeah, yeah. And Sebastian, how about you? Do you remember your first time in the mountains?
Well, I remember the first mountain that really uh, that really resonate on me. That was Acotango. I went with my dad. I think I was working as a driver for his tours. I
Hmm.
think we went with Germans also,
With Germans, yes.
and it is not. It's the first mountain that I did that it's above 6,000 meters, right? I did some before, but this was the really one, right? So
Yeah, right.
yeah, I
And
think.
how did you get into filmmaking? What inspired you to do that?
Well, actually, my dad also, no, he, besides from being a mountain guide, he also studied for script and filmmaking.
Hmm.
So I was kind of interested always since I was a little child. And well, I studied communication, and in the university, I work with a filmmaker, an important filmmaker here in Bolivia. And that's how I somehow get into the world of filmmaking. And after that, I decided to found my own company. I have a production company. And that's how we get to the point to start this podcast after a
Right,
few
right.
years.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Jose, how about your first filming experience? What was that like? I bet it was with kind of some unique old film style cameras with the reel to reel cameras. Is it that?
Oh, yeah. Yes. Well, actually, my very first experience was with an American company.
Oh.
I was a mountain guide, and they were filming a documentary climbing Huayna Potosí, that is the most popular peak in Bolivia.
Hmm.
So there was an American team with an American mountain guide. So they wanted to film the ascension of Huayna Potosí. And I was the guide, the invited guide, local guide,
Gotcha.
going with the American team. And so I saw all the process of the production, and I said, "Oh wow, this I really like it. I really like doing this job." So I went back to university because I never finished my geography studies, and I said, "Well, I need to close this circle, right?
Hmm.
I need to finish my studies." So I went to the university and studied audiovisual production. And later I did a master's degree on script writing.
Hmm.
So after that, I had several jobs, some of them with still film, really, I mean, 16 millimeter or 35 millimeter
Right,
films,
right.
always with foreign teams
Hmm.
from Europe, from United States, and I worked for companies like Nat Geo or the BBC or
Hmm. Hmm.
Discovery, just as a local producer.
That's awesome. Yeah, you guys must have some great experience in the mountains. Have you only filmed mountains or have you done other things? I haven't watched any of your films. I'm sorry. Do
Different
any
ones.
rivers or anything like that or city life or
Yeah, well, I think the most interesting things that Bolivia has to offer is the culture, the local culture. So we did, for instance, one. How do you call? Is it's not a series. It's just one part of the series. A chapter.
Oh
How do
yeah,
you?
one episode of a
One
multi-episode
episode.
series.
Yes,
Okay, got
an
you.
episode of a series called "The Around the World in 80 Faiths."
Yeah.
So
80,
it's a
80 what?
faith, faith,
Faiths. Okay. Oh, interesting.
faith.
Uh-huh.
So here we showed the religions that are still the Indian religions and the ceremonies and practices that are still being taken place in Bolivia, like the devil in the mountains or in the mines, or the llama sacrifices, things like that.
Wow, interesting.
But also adventure videos like Nat Geo, like doing the kayaking, the main river of the Bolivian highlands, from the mountains to the salt lakes. That was a really very nice thing.
I'll bet. Could you ride in a raft on that trip, or did you have to get in a kayak? It must have been in a raft.
Kayaks. We had kayaks.
Wow.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
So much fun, huh?
Oh, yes. Or some other films like following the llama caravans. There used to be, not anymore, there used to be salt traders. So they would cut the bricks of salt, and they would travel to the jungle side with the salt to trade.
Oh, wow.
So the trip will take them 3, 4, 5 months.
Wow.
They would go 2, 3 months from their place, from the highlands into the jungle, trading, because around the salt lakes, the land is really, really very poor. You cannot grow many things there.
Yeah.
So they had to trade, and they went 2, 3 months in one way and then come back in another 2, 3 months with 100, 150, 200 llamas taking all this stuff.
That's amazing. Yeah. And I forgot I was going to ask you. So when you did these trips, did you go actually multiple times with those guys to film them, or did you just go on one of their trips and film it the whole way through?
Oh, both.
Wow.
Both. We went to the starting point, let's say, where they cut the salt bricks and so on, and they start the journey. And after 2, 3 weeks, we catch with them again. And then we stayed with them for almost 1 month until they went at the verge of the jungle. We didn't go all the way into the jungle because the logistics gets really very complicated.
Yeah, you probably need different clothing once you get in there too, right?
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
So we did just this way, the way in.
That sounds fun, yeah. And is that movie still around the World in 80 Faiths?
There must be. That was a BBC production.
Oh,
and
okay.
I
I'll
think
look for it.
It was screened by Discovery Channel.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sure it is then.
Yeah, for sure.
That way we can link to it in the show notes. Yeah. So what inspired you guys to start Voices de Montaña?
Maybe you can tell.
Well, actually, it was kind of a process. Well, I actually always had the idea to make a podcast. I actually tried to make a podcast before. I made a podcast, a soccer podcast with some friends before.
Oh, cool.
I'm really not into soccer, so it did not work, but it was a lot of experience. So I kind of always had the idea. And I grew up basically listening to these stories of the mountain, right? My dad's stories or his friends' stories. And these stories always float around in my head, they were always there. And there was always an intention to make something from that, right? And a few years ago, my dad came with a few ideas to make some documentaries, some movies. I was already working on filmmaking. So he came and told me, let's make these stories. He found an amazing story about his friend who became a hero in Pakistan, a Bolivian guy. And we had the idea to make a documentary about this. We still are. We are doing it right now. But in the middle of trying to make this documentary, we realized how hard it is, right? So financing, artistic things that you still have to do to think the script, everything, right?
A lot of logistics too for you guys in the mountains.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So we had like this a few other ideas that we wanted to also make documentaries. And in the process of this, we realized that it is not possible to make 1,000 documentaries from where we are standing right now. So
yeah,
we found like a low budget equivalent to tell this story. We found in the podcast a format that could let us tell these stories in a low budget way.
Right.
And especially, I think, because these stories will lose if we do not tell them.
That's right.
You know,
That's right.
Bolivia is not a big country. We do not have like a big economy or something. So it's really hard to do some filmmaking or movies or documentaries from here. So I think we found a market, a place where we can tell these stories and connect with people in a way that it's possible from make it from here, from Bolivia.
And that's Argentina?
Sorry?
And that's Argentina? That's where you get most of the exposure?
Yeah, we do get a lot of exposure in Argentina, Chile, I think it's Brazil.
Mexico.
So it's all throughout Latin America. Yeah.
Yeah. And actually the idea of the podcast is to tell these stories, but to tell them from Bolivia. So we try to make all the interviews here in Bolivia, in the mountains. So we want to try to make this podcast to feel like a natural conversation between two guys in the mountain. That's it.
That's smart, because if you niche down, you'll have a more rabid audience to follow you. And probably you guys know all the guests to have on the show in Bolivia, right? Just reach out to people and say, hey, come on the show. It's probably pretty easy.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the equipment that you use, because do you record remotely most of the time out in the field?
Actually not. Actually, our style is to record on location. We always try to do that. We tried to make some online interviews the last few months because my dad was in Europe. And it did not have the same effect. You know, as I was telling you, we're trying to make you feel like a conversation between two guys, between two friends in the mountains. Yeah, that's awesome. That's the intention.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. And do you find, what percentage of the people that you talk with do you have relationships with, from being in the business for so long?
Oh, well, I think I know all of them.
Yeah, I was going to say you probably know most of them.
Yeah, because what's really happened, what Sebastian made me think was that all the stories we have, me and my friends and my colleagues, they are going to get lost in the memory, right?
Yeah.
These stories get to the family, to the closer friends, and that's it.
Yeah.
But there are some really very nice and extraordinary stories that should remain and should be told. And so we started with very close friends.
Yeah.
People we know their life, their trajectory, and their work, and so on. So it's easier to make the interview.
Can you tell us about the first episode and how you felt when you launched it?
Oh, well, the first episode was about the Bolivian guide who was born in one Indian community at the base of the mountains in extreme poverty and marginal conditions, right? And he really worked a lot to become a mountain guide, a certified mountain guide. And then his dream was to climb K2.
Oh, wow.
But at the end, in the middle of the pandemic, he and his wife decided, okay, we will probably die in this pandemic, and we haven't fulfilled our dream to climb the 8,000 meter peak. So they went to Pakistan.
Wow.
And it was only to get there was really an adventure.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the first time for Hugo, is his name, to climb a 8,000-meter peak. And he
Wow.
did the broad peak because K2 was not fixed yet.
Mm-hmm.
So he climbed the broad peak first. And next week he was climbing K2. So he's a very strong man.
Yeah.
But after the summit, coming down, he found a young man crying at the side of his father, the corpse of his father that died the last winter. And they were from Pakistan.
It was a famous guy.
And yes, the dead guy was a very famous mountaineer in Pakistan.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And he asked Hugo, please help me to get my father down.
Mm.
And it was in the middle of the bottleneck that is the most dangerous place in K2.
Wow, yeah, I've read about that. Yeah.
And Hugo didn't know what to do. He's not only a mountain guide, he has been trained as a mountain rescuer.
Oh, okay.
Oh, he decided to help him.
Mm-hmm.
And just him and the son, who had no experience, managed to bring down the body down to Camp 4.
Wow.
They buried him there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And he did it, even risking his life in this place, he did it out of his heart.
Right. What a
And
great guy.
For him.
Yeah.
And he didn't realize what he had done when he went back to Islamabad. He had a huge reception and interviews with the authorities, with the president, and on TV, and he became a national hero.
Wow. So he didn't know that the climber was a famous climber at the time of the rescue. Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah. Wow. That's a great story, though. I mean, that's what you love about all the people that hang out in the mountains and the outdoors, right? They're just willing to pitch in and help and ready to do anything. It doesn't matter who you are, where you're from. You need help, we'll help you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
So that was our first interview.
Wow. So you kicked it off with a big one.
Yes.
Established a good place. And do you drop an episode every week?
Not really.
No, actually, we try to focus on the quality of the episodes.
Yeah.
So we do take some time to launch some episodes. We do it monthly.
Monthly, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's good. Yeah.
We stopped last month for Christmas and everything, but we try to do it monthly.
And it's not only the podcast, because it has previously of the podcast date, we make a lot of short films, for Instagram, for TikTok, for Facebook, and so on.
Yeah,
just showing the best points of the whole interview.
Right. That's smart.
After a month of that, then we release the podcast, and let's say we try to create some expectation with the short things, and then we release the podcast.
And also we like to create more content besides the podcast, right? So we try to talk for some things that we will talk in the episode, but we will take it, like, for example, we will do like from other short videos or pictures or maybe some quotes, or I don't know. We try to do a lot of other kind of content besides the podcast itself.
And is it kind of like conservation content or stories about places?
Well, it depends. For instance, the last one we had, the interview was with a French glaciologist. And he lived in Bolivia, Peru, and Ecuador for more than 20 years. And he studied the glaciers.
Wow.
In the Andes. So we talked about him because he's a mountaineer too, and he has done some impressive climbs in the Andes, first ascensions,
Oh, wow.
very difficult ones. And besides, he studied the glaciers, and he talked about the recession and the climate change. So around this theme, we did shorts about the glacier receding, about climate change, about rubbish in the mountains, and things like that.
Or even tips of how to preserve the mountains, or how to go to a trip without taking any pollution or things like that.
Right.
We actually realized that the mountaineering community here in Latin America, there are not many places where they can go to talk about these themes, no?
Oh, right.
I think that's one of the reasons why, because this podcast had so much reception in Latin America.
Yeah. Yeah. You guys don't have all the noise that we have in the US. I'm going to call it noise.
No, not really. No.
Because we just get inundated, whether it's TV or podcasts now or video. It just seems like it's impossible to do something and be the first to do it. I mean, it is possible, but it's harder and harder and harder. And then the second step is, how do you separate yourself from the pack, from the noise? How do you rise above it all so that you get heard and listened to? And you guys have done a great job. It sounds like, from what I've read and just talking to you, what you've done to rise through all that noise. You put out great content and people will gravitate to it. So good on you.
Oh,
Thank you, Rick.
So how do you decide, with all that going on, how do you decide which stories and guests to feature on the show? Is it you must have to go talk with them and hang out with them to learn more about them, or maybe most of them, like you said, so you can pick and choose.
Yeah, we do that too. I mean, we have a list of people we want to interview, and we talk a lot with them in advance.
Gotcha.
Not only just one meeting, we do several. We talk about several themes and issues and so on. So to extract the best information and ideas from them, to organize the next podcast.
Yeah, the best stories. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where do you think your storytelling experience or thoughts come from? Because being a podcaster myself, I just kind of stumbled into it, and I get a lot of great feedback on how good I am. But I don't really. I mean, I think for me, I tell everybody I was a sales guy for a long time, and I think when you're a sales guy, you're always taught, before you offer the product, you ask a lot of questions to figure out how you're going to pitch the product. So how did that come for you guys?
Well, probably because we have some kind of artistic background. My father was a writer too, a poet, and all of us, I mean, my kids, my wife, and me, we all play instruments, and we like this environment, artistic environment. We love films, and we read a lot. We have a large library. We like to tell stories, and I always liked to tell stories. I remember when I was a kid, I told the stories about the books I read. So many kids were around me just listening, like a telltale person, right?
Right, yeah.
And I always had this natural, let's say, impulse to tell the stories. I have written a small book about the stories. I managed to be published here in Bolivia, and it's about the stories of animals and their traumatic relations with human beings. Animals I met along my trips, right? And then I have another book of stories still to be published. So I always had this intention or
Impulse, really.
impulse.
Yeah, and experience too. Your experience as a storyteller and hearing stories. I think that's huge.
Yes.
Yeah.
And as a mountain guide,
Yeah,
the long nights in base camps, you have to do something.
that's right.
I'm
That's
very
right.
good at telling stories.
Yeah. As a guide, period, I was a river guide for 6 years. So same thing. You're always sitting around camp or as you're, cruising down the river in a flat spot, no white water, you're telling stories. I used to sit around the table with my grandfather at dinner and he would tell these stories because he was a steel maker here in the US.
Oh,
And then he
yeah.
moved to Venezuela to make steel, and then he came back to the US and he was into hunting and fishing and he always had great stories. So
Uh-huh.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And Sebastian, you must have learned from Jose, right?
Yeah, as he was telling you, I think the artistic way was always in my house. No, there
Yeah.
was always something artistic. If not music, maybe film, maybe photography. I always liked to took photos. No,
Hmm.
since I was a little kid, I was some kind always obsessed with this technology and this ability to preserve moments
Yeah.
in a picture, in a frame. So yeah, I think I've had a lot of influence from my parents to do what I do right now in my life. Yeah,
It always helps. And you love it. It helps if you love it too. Always, right?
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you guys have a favorite episode or a favorite guest?
Uh,
Well, I think the first one it's very important for us,
yeah.
not only because it's the first one,
Yeah.
but because it's a really, really, really amazing story.
Hmm.
And also because we are still working on that story. We have the
Mm.
intention to make a film from this episode, from this story. And I think because of that, it keeps a special place in our show. Yeah.
Right.
And it was
So, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
it was kind of the the, the it was the first moment that we felt that maybe this could work because we were not so sure before the reception that the first episode had. We were
Mm.
not so sure that it will work, and I think it, it really marked us as creators.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think once you get into a few episodes, you realize that, you're not doing it for thousands of downloads, right? You're doing it to share the story. I'm doing the same thing with my podcast. It doesn't get thousands of downloads. It gets a lot, but I'm doing it to capture all the stories and share them and everybody can learn from everybody else's experience and stories. So that's a whole different goal and strategy and all that stuff. So good on you guys. That's awesome. I love that. It kind of makes it
Thanks.
more fun to do too, right?
Oh,
Yeah,
yes, it
a
is.
lot more
Yes.
fun.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Um, so how do you guys collaborate on the podcast? Do you share all the tasks, or does one of you do the production and one of you is more the create story creator, or is it mostly working together all the time?
Actually, we have a small team.
Okay, I was going to ask that next. Yeah.
Yeah, we are a small team of 4 people. My dad takes care mostly about the content, the interview, what are we going to talk about, and also
Hmm.
he like the how do you say this? He checks the quality of the product, right? Because he has the whole knowledge about the mountains and things more specific, so we cannot make mistakes.
Can't put a wind track in there when the wind's not blowing. You got to be authentic.
Exactly.
That's right. Yeah.
So the whole content always is curated by him first, right?
Mhm.
Then we have a friend who makes the edition. He edits the whole thing. He
Mhm.
makes the shorts also. And then we have a friend who takes care of the Instagram page and the TikTok page. So he kind of do all the whole work of community management. And I always take care of the whole production thing, no, like supervising everything, making everything work, taking care that everything it's okay. So that's kind of how we divide the work in our
Right.
team.
That's awesome. I just do everything myself. So so
Yeah,
that's why I don't do video. I just don't have time.
yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
hard. It's
Yeah.
really
yeah.
hard.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So when you go record in the field, that must be another team experience because you've got a lot of equipment to haul around and move. And like you say, up and down mountains is logistic challenge in and of itself. How many people typically go out on your adventures to do a
Well, actually,
episode?
we go with the same team.
Okay, that's good. Yeah.
And Jose, the two people who take care of the post production and the community management, also come with us to
That's
the
good.
to action.
Mhm.
And usually we ask for someone else to help because we have three cameras, one for the main shot and two for each character.
Right.
So there is a lot of equipment, as you said. We have to take a lot of equipment there, and we need people to use that equipment, right? So we usually go like for 3 or 4 people to make the shooting, and
Hmm.
also my dad, who's the host, right?
Gotcha. And who does do you all pitch in or do you have someone come along to do the cooking and the food prep or all that kind of stuff? Because if you're going to hang out there for a few days, you got to take some supplies too.
Well, no, we really do it. Well, mountains are very close to La Paz.
Oh, so you can go shoot in a
Mm,
day and come back.
yes,
Oh, okay.
our locations are maximum 1 hour from the center of the city.
Gotcha. So you're not
So
creating a
we
whole
go there, we
expedition.
take
Gotcha.
some box lunches, and
Yeah.
that's it.
Gotcha. I thought you were going on an expedition style, backcountry trip
No.
and setting step camp and recording for a week and then coming home.
We
That's
have
good.
we have ideas, but maybe in the future.
That's a big project. That's a big project. So what are some of the challenges you faced on the production side and the publishing side of getting the podcast out and, your audio and because that's a whole nother heavy lift.
Well, I think the biggest challenge was to make it real, because
Mm.
we were talking about this like several years, no?
That was an
Yeah,
idea before it came to life. I see. Interesting.
yeah.
Yeah. And we always had the idea to make it real, but we were trying, and there is work to do, and we have to travel, and we have things to do here also in the house. So we never get to the point to make it real,
Yeah. Mm.
until some point I don't know why, we just decide to do it, and from there we realized that that was just a starting point.
Yeah,
To go and take the
right.
first interview, that was the real starting point.
Yeah.
And I think to consolidate a team who knows what we are talking about, because as my dad was telling you, mountaineering here, it's not really a big thing. So there is not really a lot of people to work with who understands these things.
Hmm.
And I think to build this team and to close and our concepts to close our concepts to things that really will work, and to think everything else that it's around the podcast that we were telling you, this whole content that we were trying to make, and to think in this community. I think that was the most challenging part, to kind of build the ¿cómo se dice?
Well, the
The
whole
framework.
content strategy, right? The publication
Yeah,
strategy, right?
Yeah.
What
exactly.
are you going to create? How are you going to publish it? Where are you going to publish it? That's huge. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, actually, where we started is when we decided to hire a person to do a marketing
Strategy.
Oh,
strategy.
smart.
For
Right. Very
social
smart.
network.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she is a specialist on social networks. So she did a really very good strategy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we could follow that
Right.
because we had not, especially me, I had not the experience. I mean, I'm very new to this.
That's what I was going to ask you next is have you guys ever created a blog or I'm sure you had a website for your business, but it doesn't sound like you were pretty new to the whole marketing content game, right?
So she was really the good help. the
Yeah, I
great
bet.
help
Yeah.
that really did us
Impulse. Yeah.
the impulse, they start. Yeah.
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 Mm.
Do you
Yeah,
still
and we
work with
all
her?
kind of
Go.
invest money on it. So we had to do it after that, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah. And do you still work with her today?
Well, actually, he leave us a plan for 1 year.
She.
Hmm.
She gave us a plan for 1 year. So we
Hmm.
are still using that plan that she made, the
Got you.
business plan. But we are thinking on working with her after a few years, maybe.
Mhm.
Yeah, again.
Yeah, it's probably be good to meet with her like every, 6 months or a year, just check on your progress and what you could have done different and better and what to do next. That's awesome to have somebody like that.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It was very helpful.
Yeah, very helpful, I'll bet. Yeah. So how do you think Voices de Montaña has impacted the outdoor community? Do you get you must get a lot of great feedback on your episodes.
Yes, we do. We do. I was really surprised. We were really surprised. I mean, how it fast it
Hmm.
grew, and how many people we had, and how many people was contacting us. I even got guiding business through the podcast.
I'll bet.
So
Yeah.
it was really amazing. A result that we expected, but it happened sooner. It happened really very fast.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we saw the potential on the content because Hugo's episode was really, it really had heart,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
we really have high expectations for this. But we did not expect the reception that we had, especially outside Bolivia. We were
Hmm.
thinking that maybe this will be a small podcast for a small public here, maybe in other countries for some friends that we have there, but we did not expect the reception that we had in Argentina, especially, or
Hmm.
Chile. No,
Hmm.
we were not expecting that, and that's when we realized that, as I was telling you, I think the mountaineering community here is kind of left left alone. That there is not much content besides some newsletters or
Hmm.
maybe some influencer who climbs, but there are not many podcasts or other kind of content like tips or like these things
Hmm.
I was talking about in Spanish. There is not much content for mountaineering in Spanish.
Interesting. Yeah. In Spanish, is there a lot of content in English though?
I think so. Yeah, there is a lot. Huh?
Huh.
I
Interesting.
think,
So
yeah, there
yeah.
is much more content. Yeah.
Yeah, and very specific. I mean, there are podcasts and content of rock climbing or ice
Yeah.
climbing or skiing, mountaineering skiing or
Hmm.
big walls or
Training.
training, bouldering, many, many.
Yeah.
Here there is
Wow.
almost nothing.
Wow, that's interesting. So you guys are, establishing a place for yourself and for the community to get information. That's great. That's pretty significant. Good on you. That's awesome.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Thanks
Thank you.
again.
So we all know, those of us that are in the outdoor space, I think the value of storytelling. And I think I'm curious to get your thoughts on what you believe storytelling, the value or how you believe storytelling plays. How do you think storytelling influences inspiration and inspiring people to explore nature and climbing and all those things? Because from all the content that you're putting out there, it sounds like you're doing instruction, you're doing talk about location and natural history. So that's going to inspire a different variety of people. Did you have that in mind, or was that something that you came up with through your marketing conversations?
Mm, well, yeah, we thought about it. I think in the reception that we had a lot of comments of people who was not really into mountaineering or something close.
Right.
Maybe they had some interest in outdoor or camping or I don't know, right? But
Hmm.
I think we had also a lot of reception from people who was not from this community, who was some kind presented or inserted into this community from these episodes, right? So I think somehow we managed to inspire people to get some interest in the mountains,
Yeah.
not only here in Bolivia, but in the mountain as itself. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just in the mountains. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and I guess you guys don't have the, here in America, we have all the outdoor stores and climbing shops and, bunch of, I mean, there's probably 3 or 4 guide services here in Bishop that do guiding to the local Sierra Nevada. So there's a lot of people doing it, but there you kind of filled a void, right? There was not all the mountain shops to get the, inspiration and techniques and all that stuff. So that's great. That's awesome. Good for you.
Yeah, yeah.
Is it
Yeah,
fun? Is it fun? Do
sorry.
you love it?
Oh, yes, it is. It is. I really liked it. It was really like a surprise, a revelation that the people in these activities, around the outdoor, is so passionate.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
So
It's not like work. It's you get
oh,
to do something that's inspiring to you, inspiring to others. That's great. Yeah, I love it. Good for you.
yeah.
Yeah. Sebastian, do
Yeah,
you enjoy it? You must enjoy it as well.
well, we enjoy it a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
It's really nice to not only, as I told you, to see the reception that we have, but also to being able to tell these stories. It's kind of
Yeah.
a relief to be able to say, okay, we did it. Somehow we did not make maybe a big movie of it, but we did it. We told the story. And I think that's the most gratifying thing for me.
Yeah, that's huge. No, stories are great. I mean, I think that's what makes the world go round because I don't know anybody that doesn't like sitting down, talking, listen to a story. It's got to be a good story, but we all have to hear the history and the past and all the people that came before us. That's great.
Yeah.
Have you had the person on your first episode on another episode since the first one?
No, not
Huh,
yet.
interesting.
Not,
Okay.
not yet. Yeah, as I told you, we are actually working on a movie with him,
Right.
so we're focusing on that with him. Yeah.
Hmm. That makes sense. Yeah. All right, I'm going to shift gears a little bit and ask you some really hard questions. What's your favorite piece of outdoor gear under 500 pesos?
Under 500.
The Grigri.
Well, no, I got a new device. It'll read this Pinch. The name is Pinch. I mean, I
Pinch
use it for rock climbing. Yes,
from Edelrid. Okay. I'll have to look
yeah.
that up.
It's
What is
a
it?
German version of the Gris, of the French Gris,
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Gotcha.
but better.
Better. Okay. Got it. Well, hopefully. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Sebastian, do you have one?
I have not tried that one, but in my list, I think Grigri will be kind of my favorite. It's so easy to use. It's so secure. So yeah, I think it will be the Grigri.
Agree. Okay. Yep. Yep. Well, probably in all the work you do, you guys both use those a lot. Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice for someone wanting to start a podcast or especially one focused on outdoor adventures?
Yeah, be patient.
Yeah.
Do a lot of research, and don't go too fast.
Mm.
I mean, I have seen several podcasts that they start like doing a podcast every week, and after the third one, they just run out of gas, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
They cannot continue.
It's a
Yeah.
lot of
So,
work I do every week. It's a lot of work. Yeah.
oh yes, it is. Yes.
And I don't have a
Yeah.
team. Well, actually, I have a woman helping me with social media. So
Uh-huh.
but everything else is all me. So yeah.
I think it's also important to focus on what you really like. As I
Mhm.
was telling you, I had an experience before with a soccer podcast, and it did not feel the same. And
Mm.
when it does not feel the same, when it does not feel the same, you do not put the same effort as for something that you really like and you really enjoy. And I
Yep.
think that's very important for a podcast or any project in social media, because as you know, social media, you have to be there every day. Every day you have to post something, every day you have to tell something. So if you focus on something that you don't really enjoy or like, sooner or later you will get bored of it, and the quality will
burns you out.
Yeah.
Yeah, then it becomes a job, it doesn't become fun anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think we're lucky to be working in the outdoor adventure space too, because the people are all so gracious with their time, and everybody's so helpful. And everything I've ever done in the outdoors, whether it's guiding myself, on a group of people on a river trip, or going on an adventure with some people I didn't know, as soon as you get together with those people, it's like your people. They love the outdoors, they love the same things. So none of it seems like work. It's all play. It's just super fun. And we have so many great friends around the world that like as you do as well, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I actually realized that outdoor community, it's very passionate for what they do, right?
Yeah.
So I noticed that when we started growing, we did not had so much hate that it's very common on social media, right?
Yeah.
Of course, there are a few people, right?
Oh, yeah.
But most of the comments that we receive, it's people actually who really appreciates what we are doing and give us this energy to keep going, right? So I think this passion that they have, it's also some kind projected on what we are trying to do, and on every content, every episode, and every post that we try to make. And I think that answer from the public, from this community, it's really nice.
That's great. Yeah. And sorry, I didn't clarify. So it's not available in English, right?
Unfortunately, no.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Do you have plans to make it available in English?
Yes, we have plans, but for now we are focusing on Spanish public.
Yeah, makes sense.
Well, we are projecting to Latin America, so we are trying to maybe get some sponsors here first. Try to make this profitable. No, that's our first goal.
That's my goal too.
So firstly, we are trying to focus on Latin America, and then maybe we will think to expand to the English public. Yeah.
Might be pretty simple. I mean, there's a lot of translation programs. I don't want to get too wonky in the podcast stuff, but do you use a tool called Descript?
Oh, yeah. I know it.
Yeah, it's a great, I don't know if it does translation, but it's great to do the editing of all the ums and ahs and all that stuff. But there's probably a translation thing that you can use, or maybe soon there will be with all this AI stuff. Who knows?
There is.
There is one? Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, there is some tools that make the translation automatic. Even in voice, they change the voice to an English voice, to an English narrator.
Holy cow.
It's impressive.
Yeah,
but it still is a lot of job besides from
translating. It's another thing to do, right? Exactly.
So that's the reason why, because we are trying to focus on the Spanish public first.
Yeah.
And maybe on a future we will get to the English public. Yeah.
No, I support that 100%. Make sure when we say goodbye, don't hang up. I want to get some quick feedback from you. Well, it's been great talking to you guys. I hope to, maybe we'll connect someday in Bolivia or at a adventure travel trade event or something. Do you guys go to many trade shows? You're probably too busy to go to trade shows.
Yeah, I don't go to trade shows really.
Yeah. It's a lot of work. Yeah. Well, I'll have to come to Bolivia, I guess.
Yeah, you should.
Yeah. You're welcome here.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'll look at that and make a plan. Well, it's been great talking to you and having you guys on the show. I look forward to connecting again one day. And if I can do anything for you, don't hesitate to ask. And like I say, I'll follow up soon with all the info.
Okay. No, thanks. We have been very, very happy to be here with you, talking about our podcast, our lives, and our experience. We hope we'll do another one soon.
Absolutely. We'll have to do one after the season, then at the change of the season.
Yeah, right.
We're coming into winter here. You're coming into spring there, right?
Yeah, it's summer.
It's summer. Yeah.
Summer.
It's starting summer, really. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So maybe after the summer, we'll come on the show and talk about how the summer went.
Uh-huh. Okay.
All
Yeah,
right.
sure.
Sounds good. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rick. See you.